The year was 2347, and humanity had never known such peace. For 130 years, no human had killed another human in war. Earth had become a garden world, beautiful and calm. 12 colony planets spread across the stars carried the human flag, and everywhere humans went, they brought trade, art, and friendship. The galaxy thought they understood humans. Soft creatures, emotional beings who cried at sad stories and laughed at simple jokes. Good merchants, decent diplomats, terrible warriors. The other species had seen humans negotiate instead of fight. They had watched humans forgive instead of punish. They believed humans were weak. The Vec Dominion believed this most of all. The Vec were an insect species. They stood on 4 legs and had 2 powerful arms. Their bodies were covered in hard, black shells, and their eyes saw everything in shades of red. They controlled 40 star systems, and they had conquered 12 species before humans ever left Earth. To the Vec, strength was everything. Mercy was stupidity. Kindness was a disease. When humans began building colonies near Vec space, the Vec Supreme Commander Thol saw an opportunity. These soft pink creatures were spreading too far. They needed a lesson. They needed to learn fear. Colony Haywan 7 was a beautiful world. Green forests covered the land and blue oceans sparkled under twin suns. 9 million humans called it home. Families lived there. Children went to school there. Old people retired there to enjoy quiet years under alien skies. On the day of the summer festival, the sky filled with Vec warships. Admiral Kang Jinho was on Earth when the first reports came in. He was an old soldier, one of the few who still remembered what war meant. His gray hair and tired eyes had seen too much in his 70 years. When his communication screen lit up with emergency signals, his heart sank. The Vec did not come to conquer. They came to kill. The first wave of soldiers landed in the capital city during the festival parade. Children were holding colorful balloons. Parents were buying sweet treats from street vendors. Musicians were playing happy songs. Then the Vec opened fire. They did not shoot to wound. They did not take prisoners. They killed everyone they saw. Dr. Yuna Park was a xenobiologist working at the colony's research center. She was 32 years old, with short black hair and quick eyes. When the attack began, she was studying plant samples in her laboratory. The sound of explosions made her drop her equipment and run to the window. What she saw would stay with her forever. Vec soldiers were marching through the streets, burning everything. Bodies lay everywhere. Yuna watched a Vec soldier grab a young mother and her baby. The soldier looked directly at a floating camera drone, making sure the galaxy could see, and then killed them both. Yuna understood then. This was not just an attack. This was a performance. The Vec were broadcasting everything, every death, every scream, every moment of terror. They sent the signal across all galactic channels. They wanted everyone to see. They wanted humanity to watch their children die. On Earth, billions of people stopped what they were doing. In homes and offices, in schools and hospitals, on streets and in parks, humans watched the screens. They saw their brothers and sisters dying 9,000 light years away. They heard the screams. They saw the blood. Captain Siwoo Han was a young tactical officer on Earth's orbital station. He was 28 years old, with a strong jaw and serious eyes. His wife Minji and their twin daughters lived on Haywan 7. She had sent him a message that morning, a video of the girls getting ready for the festival, wearing matching blue dresses. Now he watched the broadcast, searching desperately for their faces, hoping he would not find them, praying they had escaped somehow. The killing continued for 72 hours. The Vec were thorough. They went building by building, street by street. They checked every hiding place. They found every survivor. The broadcast never stopped. Dr. Yuna Park survived by hiding in a collapsed medical facility. She buried herself under rubble and dead bodies. For 3 days she lay in darkness, listening to screams and gunfire. Her neural implant recorded everything, every sound, every moment. When Vec soldiers passed near her hiding spot, she held her breath until her lungs burned. When they moved on, she allowed herself one small breath. Then she waited again. Around her, 9 million humans died. On Earth, Admiral Kang Jinho stood in the command center, watching the broadcast. His officers wept openly. Some vomited, some fell to their knees. Jinho did none of these things. He stood perfectly still, his face like stone, and he watched every second. Supreme Commander Thol appeared on screen when the killing was finished. He was larger than other Vec, with golden marks on his black shell. His voice was cold and satisfied. "Let this be a lesson," Thol said. "Humans will retreat to their single world. They will stay there and never expand again. If they leave Earth, we will empty every colony they possess. We will kill every human we find. This is not a threat. This is a promise. You have seen what we can do. Do not test us again." The broadcast ended. For one long moment, Earth was silent. Billions of humans stood frozen, unable to speak, unable to move. They had just watched 9 million of their people die. They had heard the screams of children. They had seen families torn apart. Then the silence broke. It did not break into crying or panic. It broke into something else, something the galaxy had never seen before, something that would change everything. Captain Siwoo Han finally found his family in the broadcast footage. His wife Minji had died protecting their daughters. She had covered them with her body, but the Vec had killed all 3 anyway. Siwoo watched the moment of their death, and something inside him went cold and hard and still. Admiral Kang Jinho turned away from the screen at last. His officers looked at him, waiting for orders, waiting for guidance. His voice, when he spoke, was quiet and calm. "Begin full military mobilization," he said. "Contact all colonies. Wake every retired soldier. Open the sealed weapon vaults." A young officer asked what the plan was. Jinho looked at him with eyes that had become empty of everything except purpose. "They killed 9 million of us and made us watch," Jinho said. "They wanted us to be afraid. They wanted us to surrender." He paused. They made a mistake. Across Earth, the same transformation was happening. Grief turned to rage. Fear turned to fury. The soft, peaceful humans that the galaxy knew were disappearing. Something older was waking up. Something the Vec had never seen. Humanity had almost forgotten what it truly was. The Vec had just reminded them. Dr. Yuna Park crawled out of the rubble on the 4th day. She was covered in blood that was not her own. Around her lay the ruins of everything she had known. She was one of only 347 survivors from a population of 9 million. She looked up at the sky and made a silent promise. The galaxy had seen humanity weep. Now they would see humanity rise. The Vec had wanted to teach humans a lesson about fear. They were about to learn a lesson themselves. 3 months passed after the massacre. The Vec Dominion waited for humanity to surrender. They expected crying diplomats to arrive with offers of peace. They expected humans to beg for mercy, to promise they would never expand again, to accept their place as a weak and frightened species. They received only silence. President Bora Shin stood before the United Earth Council in a chamber so quiet that every breath could be heard. She was 54 years old, with silver streaks in her black hair and eyes that had grown cold since the broadcast. Before the massacre, she had been known for her warm smile and gentle leadership. That woman was gone now. Something harder had taken her place. Every seat in the council chamber was filled. Representatives from every nation on Earth, from every colony that remained, waited for her words. Many had lost family on Haywin 7. All had lost something. President Shin looked at them for a long moment. Then she spoke. "We will leave nothing behind." That was all. 5 words, no explanation needed. Everyone understood. The transformation of Earth began that same day. For 130 years, human factories had made beautiful things: art and furniture, electronics and clothing, toys and decorations. Now those factories changed. Assembly lines that once made children's bicycles began making weapon components. Fashion designers started creating military uniforms. Toy makers built drone parts. No law forced this change. No government order demanded it. The people simply decided, all together, without needing to discuss it. Every human knew what needed to be done. Every human wanted to help. General Tae Woo-yoon was put in charge of planning the war. He was 60 years old, with a scarred face from an accident in his youth and a mind sharper than any blade. For 2 months, he did nothing but study the VEC. He read every report. He analyzed every battle they had ever fought. He learned their biology, their psychology, their beliefs. The VEC were a hive species. Each of their 40 worlds had a queen node, a massive creature that connected to all other VEC through some kind of mental link. The queen nodes could not fight. They could not run. They simply sat in their chambers and controlled everything. Without them, the VEC would fall into confusion and madness. General Yoon smiled when he discovered this. He had found their weakness. Engineer Do-Yun Choi led the weapons program. He was only 35, but his genius with technology was known throughout human space. Before the massacre, he had designed beautiful starships meant for exploration and trade. Now he designed something else entirely. His team worked in a secret facility deep underground. They slept only a few hours each night. They ate their meals while working. Some collapsed from exhaustion and were carried to beds, only to return to work the moment they woke. After 2 months, Do-hyun presented his creation to the military council. "We call it the Myeolmang Fleet," he said. The word meant destruction in the old Korean language. These ships are not built for conquest. They are not built to hold territory or capture prisoners. They have one purpose only. He showed them the designs. The ships bristled with weapons. They carried bombs that could crack a planet's crust. They held biological agents designed specifically to kill VEC and nothing else. "These ships," Do-Yun said quietly, "are built to end a species." Admiral Kang Jin-ho stood in the back of the room, listening. 3 months ago, he had been a peacetime commander, managing patrol routes and supply schedules. Now he would lead the largest military operation in human history. He studied the ship designs and nodded slowly. They were terrible weapons, beautiful in their terrible purpose. The galactic community sent diplomats to Earth. They came from 12 different species, representing the great powers of the galaxy. They spoke of peace and understanding. They urged restraint and forgiveness. President Shin received them in a formal meeting room. She listened politely to every word they said. She offered them tea and comfortable seats. She thanked them for their concern. Then she told them no. The lead diplomat, a tall blue creature from a species called the Morath, pressed harder. "What the VEC did was terrible," he said, "but genocide is not the answer. If you destroy them completely, you become no better than they are." President Shin looked at him with those cold eyes. "I understand your concern," she said. "But you did not watch 9 million of your children die while the killers laughed. You did not hear their screams broadcast across the galaxy. Until you have experienced what we experienced, I do not think you can judge what we must do." The diplomats left with nothing. Across the galaxy, the VEC watched human preparations and laughed. Supreme Commander Thol found the whole thing amusing. He had seen humans cry during the broadcast. He had watched their weak leaders beg for the killing to stop. These soft creatures building warships? It was like watching prey animals try to become predators. "Let them come," Thol said to his commanders. "We will teach them another lesson. We will burn another colony and make them watch again. Eventually, they will learn their place." The Vec did not understand what they had awakened. Captain Siwoo Han had not slept more than 3 hours a night since the massacre. His wife and daughters visited him in his dreams, and he could not bear to see them. So he worked, he trained, he made himself into a weapon. The military academy accepted him into the officer advancement program. His scores were the highest in his class. His instructors noted that he never smiled, never laughed, never showed any emotion at all. He was perfect. Dr. Yuna Park arrived on Earth as one of the few survivors of HFY-7. The government offered her counseling, rest, whatever she needed. She refused it all. Instead, she went to General Yoon and offered her services. "I spent years studying alien species," she said. "I know how they think. I know how they feel. Use me." Yoon looked at this small woman with blood still under her fingernails, scratches still healing on her face, and saw someone who had walked through death and come out the other side. "Welcome to the war," he said. 8 months after the massacre, the Myeolmang fleet was ready. 15,000 warships, each one a machine of destruction. 5 million soldiers, each one a volunteer who had asked to serve. They gathered in orbit around Earth, blocking out the stars. Admiral Kang Jin-ho stood on the bridge of the flagship, looking out at his fleet. In his hand, he held a small photograph of his daughter. She had not been on HFY-7, but she was the reason he fought. Every child who had died was someone's daughter or son. The communication screen lit up with President Shin's face. "Admiral," she said, "you have your orders. The Vec offered us no warning before their attack. We will return that courtesy. There will be no declaration of war, no demands, no negotiation, just justice." Jin-ho nodded slowly. "I understand, Madam President." "One more thing," she said. Her voice dropped, becoming almost soft. "Those 9 million souls are watching. Make sure they rest in peace." The communication ended. Admiral Jin-ho turned to his bridge crew. These men and women had trained for this moment for months. They were ready. They were eager. "Set course for Vex space," Jin-ho ordered. "Maximum speed. All ships." The fleet moved as 15,000 engines lighting up the darkness. They slipped into faster-than-light travel and vanished from Earth's sky. The galactic community received notice of the fleet's departure and called an emergency session. They debated what to do. Some suggested stopping the humans by force. Others argued that the Vec deserved whatever was coming. In the end, they did nothing. They simply watched and waited, the way humanity had been forced to watch the massacre. Supreme Commander Thol received reports of the approaching fleet and felt the first small touch of doubt. 15,000 ships was many more than he expected. Still, the Vec had won every war they had ever fought. These soft humans would be no different. He was wrong. The first Vec border outpost detected the human fleet 3 days later. They sent a warning message and prepared their defenses. They were still preparing when the human ships opened fire. The battle lasted 4 minutes. Every Vec on the station died. The humans did not slow down. They did not take prisoners. They did not even stop to confirm the kill. They simply moved on to the next target. The war had begun. The Vec had expected many things. They expected the humans to attack 1 or 2 border worlds. They expected emotional, disorganized strikes driven by grief. They expected to easily defeat these soft creatures and teach them another bloody lesson. They did not expect this. The human fleet did not attack one system. They attacked all 40 at the same time. Admiral Kang Jin-ho had divided his forces into strike groups, each one targeting a different Vec world. They hit military bases and civilian centers. They struck communication towers and breeding chambers. They attacked everything, everywhere, all at once. Supreme Commander Thol received reports from across his empire. At first, he did not believe them. Humans could not be this coordinated. Humans could not be this ruthless. But the reports kept coming, each one worse than the last. Human ships had appeared over Korath, one of the largest Vec hive worlds. They had destroyed the orbital defenses in minutes. Now they were bombing the surface, targeting the breeding chambers where young Vec were grown. Thal finally understood. This was not a war of conquest. This was not about territory or resources. The humans had come to kill every last member of his species. Lieutenant Nari Kim flew with the Ghost Wings, an elite stealth squadron. She was 26 years old, with steady hands and cold eyes. Before the massacre, she had been a cargo pilot, moving supplies between colonies. Now she flew a fighter equipped with weapons that could melt through Vec armor. Her squadron dropped out of stealth above Korath's largest breeding facility. Below her, she could see millions of Vec eggs in their growth chambers. In a few months, these eggs would become soldiers who might kill more humans. Nari did not hesitate. Her thumb pressed the firing button. The bombs fell like rain. Each one carried biological agents designed by engineer Do-hyun Choi's team. They killed Vec and nothing else. No other species would be harmed. The agents spread through the breeding chambers, destroying everything they touched. When it was done, Nari flew over the ruins and saw nothing but death. She felt no guilt. She felt no satisfaction. She simply moved on to the next target. Commander Hyun Bak led the ground forces. He was a massive man, nearly 2 meters tall, with shoulders like a bear and a voice that could shake walls. His special operations teams had one mission: find the human prisoners that the Vec had taken as slaves. Vec labor camps existed on 17 worlds. Humans captured from merchant ships and small outposts had been forced to work in these camps for years. The conditions were beyond terrible. Humans were treated worse than animals, starved and beaten and worked until they died. Commander Bayek's team landed on a labor camp planet called Vecnar 3 in the middle of the night. They moved silently through the darkness, killing Vec guards with their knives. No noise, no warning, just death. When they reached the main prison building, Beck kicked down the door and entered with his soldiers. What they found inside made even these hardened warriors stop in shock. Hundreds of humans sat in cages meant for animals. Their bodies were thin and covered in scars. Many were missing fingers or hands, taken as punishment for small crimes. Some looked up with empty eyes that held no hope. A young woman in the nearest cage stared at Beck's uniform and began to cry. "You came," she whispered. "You actually came." Beck knelt beside her cage and broke the lock with his hands. "We came," he said. "We will take you home. And we will make them pay for every scar on your body." The liberation of the labor camps spread across Vec space. Each story that came back to Earth was worse than the last. Humans had been tortured for entertainment. Humans had been used for medical experiments. Humans had been hunted for sport. Every story made humanity angrier. Every story made the fleet fight harder. The galactic community demanded that humanity stop. Their message reached Admiral Jinho's flagship during the assault on the Vec military headquarters. An alien diplomat appeared on screen, speaking of war crimes and excessive force. Admiral Jinho listened for exactly 10 seconds. Then he sent his response, the 72-hour massacre footage from Haywan 7, every scream, every death, every child murdered while the Vec laughed. "Watch this," Jinho said. "And then tell me about excessive force." The diplomatic channel went silent. Supreme Commander Thol finally decided to negotiate. The war was going badly. 10 of his worlds had already fallen. His fleet was being destroyed piece by piece. He needed this to stop. He sent a message to the human flagship requesting a meeting. To his surprise, Admiral Jinho accepted. The communication screen showed the human commander's face. Thal had seen humans before, but never one like this. There was nothing soft in those eyes, nothing emotional or weak, only ice and iron and endless patience. "I am prepared to discuss terms," Thol said. "Perhaps we can find a solution that benefits both species." Admiral Jinho said nothing. He reached into his pocket and removed a small device. He pressed a button, and a recording began to play. It was the voice of a human child, a little girl, maybe 5 years old. She was crying for her mother. She was begging for help. Then there was a sound of weapon fire, and the crying stopped. Thol recognized the recording. It was from the Haywan 7 broadcast. He had ordered that broadcast himself. "This child's name was Yunji," Admiral Jinho said quietly. "She was 4 years old. Her mother's name was Minji. Her father is one of my officers. He watched your soldiers kill his entire family while you broadcast it for entertainment." Thol shifted uncomfortably. "That was a military decision, a necessary action to—" "Do not speak." Jinho's voice cut like a blade. "I did not accept this communication to negotiate. I accepted it so I could tell you something personally." He leaned forward, his face filling the screen. "You made us watch," Jinho said. "You killed our children and made us listen to their screams. You thought we would surrender. You thought we would be afraid. You were wrong. We are not afraid. We are coming, and we will not stop until every Vec is dead." He ended the communication. Thol sat in the sudden silence, and for the first time in his life, he understood fear. The war continued. 15 Vec worlds fell, then 20, then 30. The humans showed no mercy. They took no prisoners. They did exactly what they had promised to do. Dr. Yuna Park watched the progress reports from Earth. She had become an advisor on psychological warfare, helping the military understand how the Vec thought. Sometimes she gave interviews to news programs, sharing her experience as a survivor. Her message was always the same. "They thought our tears meant weakness," she would say. "They are learning what human tears really mean." The galactic community watched in horror as an entire species was being erased from existence. Some species sympathized with the Vec. Others remembered that the Vec had conquered and enslaved 12 species before humans ever arrived. No one interfered. One by one, Vec worlds went dark. Emergency signals reached the galactic community, desperate pleas for help, for mercy, for intervention. The Vec were dying by the billions, and no one came to save them. Captain Siwoo Han earned promotion after promotion through the war. He fought in 12 major battles. He killed more Vec than anyone could count. His fellow soldiers respected him and feared him in equal measure. He never spoke about his wife and daughters. He kept no photographs. He showed no grief. He simply killed and killed and killed. In his dreams, he still saw his daughters in their matching blue dresses, ready for the festival. When he woke, he went back to war. Admiral Jinho received reports that the path to the Vec homeworld was almost clear. Only a few more worlds stood in their way. The end was coming. He looked at his fleet, smaller now after months of combat, but still powerful enough to finish the job. These humans had become something new, not the soft, peaceful creatures the galaxy had known. Something older, something that remembered what it meant to be the apex predator of a dangerous world. The Vec homeworld waited ahead. 80 billion Vec lived there, not for much longer. 30 Vec worlds had fallen silent. The empire that once controlled 40 star systems had shrunk to 10, then 5, then 2. 80 billion Vec had become 12 billion. Bodies floated in the space between worlds, frozen and forgotten. The galactic community held endless meetings to discuss what was happening. Representatives from 50 species argued and debated and proposed solutions, but none of them acted. None of them dared. One diplomat, an ancient creature with silver scales and wise eyes, spoke the truth that no one wanted to hear. "We are watching extinction," he said, "and we are doing nothing because secretly we are grateful. The Vec conquered 12 species before humanity existed. The Vec showed no mercy to any of them. Now the Vec are dying, and no one weeps for them. The other diplomats fell silent. They knew he was right. Admiral Kang Jinho stood in his quarters aboard the flagship, staring at his reflection in the dark window. The man looking back at him was old and tired. His uniform hung looser than it had a year ago. His eyes held shadows that would never leave. He knew what he was doing. He was committing genocide. He was erasing an entire species from existence. Every order he gave killed thousands, sometimes millions. He would carry this weight for whatever remained of his life. But then he remembered the broadcast. He remembered the screams of children. He remembered the faces of his officers as they watched their families die. He remembered the Vec laughing. He turned away from the window and returned to the bridge. There was work to be done. Dr. Una Park had an idea. She proposed a new kind of attack, one that would break the Vec spirit before the final battle. The military council listened, and they approved. The next day, Una's survival footage was broadcast across all remaining Vec worlds. For 72 hours, exactly as long as the original massacre, the Vec were forced to watch what their soldiers had done. Every death, every scream, every moment of terror that Una had recorded while hiding under rubble and corpses. Then Una herself appeared on screen. She was calm. Her voice was steady. Her eyes were empty. "You made us watch," she said. "Now you understand." The broadcast repeated on a loop for days. The Vec could not escape it. Every screen, every speaker, every communication device showed them the horror they had created. They had wanted humanity to feel helpless. Now they felt it themselves. Queen Mother Seleth was the last ruler of the Vec. She was ancient, her shell cracked with age, her mind connected to every remaining member of her species. She had lived for 300 years and remembered when the Vec were young and few before they became conquerors. Now she watched her people die, and she felt every death through the mental link. Billions of minds screaming in terror, then going silent, worlds burning, children never hatching, an entire civilization collapsing into dust. She sent a message to the human fleet. Her voice was tired and broken. "Please," she said, "I offer you everything. Total surrender. Reparations beyond measure. Our remaining worlds will become your property. Our people will serve you forever. Just please stop the killing. Let some of us survive." The response came from President Bora Shin herself, speaking from Earth. "You offered us no mercy," President Shin said. "We returned the courtesy." The communication ended. Queen Mother Seleth wept, though the Vec had no tears. She had ruled an empire. She had conquered species. She had believed her people were destined to control the galaxy. Now she would watch them disappear. The remaining Vec commanders gathered their final fleet. It was not large enough to defeat the humans, but perhaps it was enough to reach Earth. Perhaps, if they could strike at the human homeworld, they could force a negotiation. Perhaps they could save something. 2,000 Vec warships launched from their homeworld and raced toward Earth. They traveled faster than any Vec fleet had traveled before, burning their engines until they broke. They never reached Earth. Admiral Jinho had expected this move. General Taiwu Yun had predicted it months ago. A trap waited halfway between Vec space and Earth, hidden in the darkness between stars. The Vec fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel and found itself surrounded by human ships. They had no chance. The battle lasted less than an hour. When it was over, 2,000 Vec warships were debris, and not a single human ship had been seriously damaged. The path to the Vec homeworld was now completely clear. Captain Siwoo Han received news of his promotion to commander. He stood in his quarters and looked at the medal they had given him for exceptional service. It meant nothing. Medals could not bring back his wife. Medals could not bring back his daughters. A message arrived from Admiral Jinho. Siwu was being assigned to the flagship for the final assault. He would have a special role in what came next. Siwu packed his few belongings and transferred to his new post. When he arrived on the flagship's bridge, Admiral Jinho greeted him personally. "I read your file," Jinho said. "Your family was on HFY 7. Siwu nodded. He did not trust himself to speak. "I am giving you an honor," Jinho continued. "When the time comes, you will fire the first weapon on the Vec homeworld. You will begin the final justice for your wife and daughters." For a moment, something cracked in Siwu's frozen expression. Something that might have been grief or gratitude or simply exhaustion. Then his face hardened again. "Thank you, Admiral," he said. The fleet moved toward the Vec homeworld. 142 ships remained from the original 15,000. They had lost many friends in the war. They had seen terrible things. They had done terrible things. But they were still strong enough to finish this. Dr. Yuna Park watched the fleet's progress from Earth. She had done her part. Her footage had broken Vec morale across their remaining worlds. Her broadcasts had shown them what they had created. But sometimes, late at night, she wondered if they were doing the right thing. The Vec had killed 9 million humans. Humanity was killing tens of billions in return. Was this justice? Or was it something darker? She had no answer. She was not sure anyone did. President Bora Shin sat alone in her office the night before the final assault. The weight of her decision pressed down on her like a physical force. She was about to order the extinction of a species. She would be remembered for this, either as a hero or a monster, for as long as human history continued. She thought about the children of HFY 7. She thought about their parents who had died trying to protect them. She thought about the screams that still echoed in her memory. Then she thought about the Vec children who would die tomorrow. They were not guilty. They had not chosen to attack HFY 7. They were simply born into the wrong species at the wrong time. She closed her eyes and whispered a prayer to whatever gods might be listening, not for herself, for everyone who would die because of what she was about to do. Then she opened her eyes and prepared the final order. The fleet arrived at the edge of the Vec home system as the sun rose over Earth. Admiral Jinho looked at the planet on his display screen. Vekar Prime, the birthplace of the Vec species, home to the last 12 billion of their kind. He thought about everything that had led to this moment. The massacre, the grief, the rage, the war. All of it ending here, above this alien world. He turned to his communication officer. "Open a channel to Earth," he said. "Tell them we are in position. Ask for final authorization." The message traveled across the stars. Minutes passed. Then the response came, carrying President Shin's voice. "Authorization granted. Begin final protocol." Admiral Jinho nodded slowly. He looked at Commander Siwu Han, standing ready at the weapons station. "Siwu," he said quietly, "it is time." Siwu placed his hand on the firing controls. His heart was empty. His mind was clear. He thought of Minji, his beautiful wife. He thought of his daughters in their blue dresses. Then he stopped thinking and prepared to end a species. Vekar Prime turned slowly below the human fleet. It was a beautiful world in its own way, with purple oceans and mountains of black crystal. Cities covered every continent, home to the last 12 billion Vec in existence. Admiral Kang Jinho stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched the planet. He had never seen a Vec world this close before. The buildings had strange shapes, designed for beings with 4 legs and 2 arms. The streets followed patterns that made no sense to human eyes. Millions of years of civilization had built this place. Soon it would all be gone. The remaining Vec fleet formed a defensive ring around their homeworld. Barely 100 ships remained, crewed by soldiers who knew they were going to die. They did not run. They did not surrender. They simply waited. Admiral Jinho opened a final communication channel. Queen Mother Seleth's ancient face appeared on screen. She looked even older now, her shell gray and crumbling, her eyes dull with exhaustion. "I offer you one chance," Jinho said. His voice was quiet but carried through the bridge. "Unconditional surrender. Your people will be exiled to a single barren moon. You will be watched forever. You will never expand again, but you will survive." Seleth looked at him for a long moment. Hope flickered in her tired eyes. Then she turned to her commanders, speaking in the Vec language. Jinho watched their reactions. He saw anger, pride, defiance. The commanders argued with their queen, their voices rising in what seemed like fury. Seleth turned back to the screen. Her voice was heavy with sorrow. "My commanders refuse," she said. "They say we will not live as slaves. They say it is better to die fighting than to surrender our honor." She paused. "I tried. I truly tried. But I cannot control them anymore." The Vec fleet began to move, launching toward the human ships in one final desperate attack. Jinho felt something like pity. The Vec commanders had chosen extinction over exile. Pride had destroyed their last chance. "So be it," he said. The battle was short and brutal. The Vec fought with everything they had, crashing their ships into human vessels when their weapons failed. 3 human ships were destroyed, 12 were damaged. But when the fighting ended, not a single Vec ship remained. Now only the planet stood between humanity and justice. Commander Siwoo Han stood at the weapons console, his hand steady on the controls. Around him, the bridge crew was silent. Every officer understood the weight of this moment. Every officer felt it pressing down on their shoulders. Admiral Jinho walked slowly to stand beside Siwoo. The old admiral looked at the young commander, seeing the emptiness in his eyes, the grief that had become cold and still as stone. "Your daughters," Jinho said quietly. "What were their names?" Siwoo's jaw tightened. He had not spoken their names in months. He had locked them away in the deepest part of his heart. "Hayun," he said, his voice cracked on the word. "And Jiwoo. They were 3 years old." Jinho nodded slowly. "When you press that button, say their names. Let them know this is for them." Siwoo looked down at his hand. It was trembling now. Just slightly. All the coldness he had built around himself was cracking. All the walls he had raised to protect himself from grief were falling down. He thought of Hayun's laugh. He thought of Jiwoo's smile. He thought of his wife Minji holding them both, her face full of love. Then he thought of them dying. He thought of the Vec soldier who had killed them. He thought of the broadcast that had forced him to watch. His hand stopped trembling. His eyes hardened again. The grief was still there, but now it had purpose. On Earth, President Bora Shin watched the live feed from the fleet. Billions of humans watched with her, gathered around screens in every city, every town, every small village. The world had stopped to witness this moment. Shin's voice came through the communication channel, reaching the flagship. "Admiral Jinho, begin final protocol." Jinho looked at his crew one last time. These men and women had followed him through hell. They had fought and bled and lost friends. Now they would finish what the Vec had started. "Commander Han," he said, "fire at will." Siwoo took a deep breath. He closed his eyes for just a moment. "Hayun," he whispered. "Jiwoo, this is for you." His hand pressed the firing controls. The weapons platforms activated all around the planet. Missiles launched. Energy beams cut through the atmosphere. The bombardment fell on Vakar Prime like the anger of an ancient god. The first strikes hit the military installations, then the government buildings, then the cities themselves. Fire spread across the purple oceans and black mountains. Explosions lit up the night side of the planet like 1,000 new suns. Queen Mother Seleth sat in her chamber as the world burned around her. Through her mental link, she felt every death. Millions at first, then hundreds of millions. Her people screaming in her mind, then going silent, one by one by one. She did not try to escape. There was nowhere to go. She simply sat and watched her species die, carrying the knowledge that she could have stopped this if only her commanders had listened. Her last thought, as the fire reached her chamber, was of the human children who had died on HFY. She finally understood how their parents had felt. Too late. Far too late. The bombardment continued for 27 hours. The human fleet was thorough. They checked every city, every bunker, every hiding place. They found survivors and ended them. They found ships trying to escape and destroyed them. When it was finished, Vekar Prime was a burned and empty shell. Not a single Vek remained alive. The species that had ruled 40 star systems, that had conquered 12 other races, that had killed 9 million humans and laughed while doing it was extinct. Admiral Jinho sat alone in his quarters and recorded the final military log. His voice was tired but steady. "The Vek Dominion is extinct," he said. "After 40,000 years, their species ends today. Let the galaxy remember what happened here. Let them remember why it happened. Humanity asked for peace. The Vek answered with slaughter. We answered with extinction. May the universe judge us fairly." He ended the recording and sat in silence for a long time. Commander Siwoo Han stood at a window, looking at the ruined planet below. He had done it. He had avenged his family. He had killed billions for the deaths of his wife and daughters. He expected to feel satisfaction, or relief, or closure. He felt nothing. Just the same cold emptiness that had lived inside him since the massacre. His family was still dead. No amount of killing could bring them back. But at least the Vek would never hurt anyone again. The fleet began its journey home. The war was over. The galactic community held an emergency summit when the news reached them. 50 species debated what to do. Some demanded that humanity be punished for genocide. Others argued that the Vek had brought this on themselves. In the end, they did nothing. They wrote strongly worded statements. They expressed concern. They proposed new treaties. But no species actually moved against humanity. Every ambassador looked at the human delegation and saw the same thing. A species that had been soft and peaceful, that had been friendly and forgiving, and that had destroyed an entire civilization when pushed too far. A new phrase entered galactic vocabulary: human patience. It meant the quiet calm before absolute destruction. It became a warning. When a human smiled at you, everything was fine. When a human went quiet and still, you had already lost. On Earth, memorials rose for the 9 million who had died on HFY. Their names were carved in stone that would last forever. Every year, on the anniversary of the massacre, all of humanity observed 1 minute of silence. Then they went back to building, expanding, and growing. The colonies continued to spread. Human ships traveled to new stars. The peaceful merchants and friendly diplomats returned. But something had changed. The other species could see it. Behind every smile, behind every handshake, there was something dangerous watching. Something ancient. Something that remembered. Humanity would never forget what the Vek had done, and they would never hesitate to respond if another species made the same mistake. Dr. Una Park published her memoir 5 years after the war. It became the most translated book in galactic history. Every species wanted to understand what had happened. Every species wanted to know how the soft humans had become destroyers of worlds. The final line of her book became famous across the galaxy. It was quoted in speeches, carved on monuments, and repeated in whispers among alien diplomats. "They thought our tears meant weakness," she wrote. "They learned too late that grief and rage are the same fire, and humanity's fire burns very, very hot. Admiral Kang Jinho retired to a small house by the sea. He lived simply, tending a garden and watching the waves. Sometimes he dreamed of the burning planet. Sometimes he dreamed of the children's screams. He never complained. He had done what needed to be done. Commander Siwoo Han, now Admiral Han, continued to serve in the fleet. He never married again. He never had more children. But he made sure no other families would suffer what his had suffered. President Bora Shin served 2 more terms before retiring. History would remember her as the leader who had ordered an extinction. Some called her a monster, others called her a hero. She called herself neither. She was simply someone who had made the hardest choice in human history and lived with it. The galaxy moved on. New alliances formed. Old enemies became friends. Humanity took its place among the great powers, respected and feared in equal measure. But every species remembered the lesson of the Vec. Every species understood what would happen if they threatened human worlds again. The universe was vast and full of dangers, but the greatest danger of all walked on 2 legs, shed tears, and never, ever forgave.